Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We'll come to order. First item of business is the agenda.
I'm gonna move to approve the agenda.
And I'm gonna second it because there's nobody else here.
Ringing on my ear.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So unanimous. Next up is a public hearing on the proposed 2024 Hancock County budget estimates, including the 2024 through 2025 unorganized territory budget. So we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak to the budget?
Where is it? Hey, behind you. Somebody wants to grab it all. Should be 3 handouts there. One's the county one, one's the UT, and then of course the agenda. Kathleen, that's the problem.
Yeah. Just keeps different.
That's the problem with this process. The statute says we have to have a public hearing before we submit the budget to the BAC, but it doesn't tell us what we should make available. You know what I mean? It only makes sense that if the public wants to comment on the budget recommendations that we're making to the BAC, well, they should have a copy of the budget, but if we don't know they want it, you know, I mean, we can't just send it to everybody, so.
I mean, we
So no, I
send them
understand.
each town. So
Each town, each,
send them to the, I send them to the BAC members and I send them to the legislative delegation as well, so. But beyond that, I mean, whoever saw the notice in the paper is required to ask for it, so. And we did have a couple people do that.
Usually we have a bind of it.
Not yet.
We didn't read my email or my letter to you.
The binder comes.
You said you saw it came from Mike? Yeah.
that binder, Kathleen, is what comes to you after the public hearing, after we make any final adjustments. Then the binder is what we're recommending to the BAC, or our proposed budget to the BAC. So I mean, it's getting ahead of it, put that binder together before we have the public hearing and before we make our final adjustments.
So those will be ready Monday anyway. Yeah.
Anyone wish to speak? Anybody? in TV land? Monica? Everybody's got their hand up?
Yep.
So I'm gonna close the public hearing unless I hear I'll plead one last time. Anyone here to speak to this budget?
What can you tell us about it?
Want to give a brief introduction?
So as it stands at the moment right now, we have expenditures up by a little over $1 million from what was requested at the end of 2000 or the 2023 budget. So $1,052,964 is what I have. Revenues are actually down close to almost 300,000, so around 288,270. In the amount to be projected to be raised through taxation right now without any adjustments, and obviously whatever the BAC can do, is right now at 7,392,782, which would be a dollar increase of $1,341,234, or a percent 18.14. So that's a little bit.
7,392,782.
That's last year.
That was
Oh,
the 2023.
Yeah, no,
number.
sorry, yes, that's right. So the amount for this year, sorry, is 8,734,60. My apologies.
Which just to reiterate is an 18.14% increase. And the increase amount is at 1.341234.
Third party request, you're taking them out of the budget?
So, yeah, I mean, what's being proposed right now, there's 2 entities in there that the commission based on statutory requirements, felt they needed to be done. And then we are establishing a grant process where they can apply for community benefit funds or whatever. And then also there is a match though in the commissioner's line item, Durham 4, there's a line item in there for, what was it, 40,000?
Yes.
Anyway, that we have put in as matching to go towards that grant. So there will be an opportunity for those third parties to apply, but it's just not built into the budget for this coming year. As a taxation fund, basically,
Not the full amount.
not the full.
Half of it, there's another party in the budget for third party request that's matched by the community benefits account. I'll tell you that, and I don't have that number in front of you, but the originally proposed budgets by each department head and whatnot was like a 26 or 28% increase. And we pared that down to 18, so we've already done a lot of work to try to get this down as much as we can before it went to you. So remember what that was? Michael?
Yeah, you were 26.63, yeah.
Yeah, 26.5% when we got it. And then we worked on it and got it down to 18 something. So we're looking for you to get that down. We don't know what our LD1 figure is yet. And might not know that for what, a few weeks?
Well, yeah, I mean, at least a couple of weeks. I'm still getting numbers from the communities and I'm waiting to verify the final numbers from the state.
Yeah, we're at the mercy of waiting for those numbers.
I mean, I can give you a rough one, but it's not gonna be.
We know it's not.
Yeah, it's not gonna be accurate.
Anyone else have questions or comments? Nope.
What's the big decrease in the drug task force?
What's the question?
It looks like a significant decrease in drug task force, like for Department 46, up around the.
Well, what happened was is that several years ago, Drug Task Force, when it was first starting up, didn't have enough money for a field office for all the state. Hancock and Washington County did not have a field office. We didn't have agents assigned to Hancock and Washington County. They would use them out of Bangor if they could, but we were competing with all the drugs in Bangor. So at the time, the sheriff and the police chiefs got together, they lobbied the towns agreed to support money in the county budget that we would give to Maine Drug Enforcement to support a field office. Now, that's been going on now for 20 years. Well, in exchange for that, we also had a call sharing agreement with the state police where they would give, assign troopers and handle half the calls. They started with half the calls, but a certain number of calls. Well, we were told by the state that effective January 1st, that's not going to happen. They're going to withdraw those. And we don't get that support anymore from the state. The sheriff says if they don't, I need more help. So we had no choice but to take the money that we were giving the state for drug enforcement and assign it to law enforcement functions. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be a drug task force. The drug task force is a supervisor and 4 agents. We paid for 2. There'll still be a supervisor and 2 agents, and NDEA can look at their resources and direct some of their own money back into the Hancock, Washington County field office and keep that up full staff. So this does not mean that there won't be drug investigations in Hancock County. It's just that the county taxpayer will not be directly funding some of that.
And that's something that didn't come easy. We're 26% was crazy. I still think 18 is crazy. But just,
Well, if you want to talk about how uneasy it was, I was the sheriff that lobbied with the police chiefs and raised that money. I've been very proud of the fact that we have taken that $250,000 the first year and never spent any more. We never asked for any more. With forfeitures and everything else, we've kept that at $250,000 now. I defy any government agency to say in 20 years, I never raised my budget by $1. So, but now I'm sitting here today saying, what a shame. We have no choice, but we need to direct the tax money from supporting the state's mission over to supporting our own.
It's just been cost shifting on us for it. So
To what,
it's been a cost shift onto us, the county,
the state pulling
for
out,
the state
Yeah.
pulling out.
We feel the same way. It's-
and I personally don't understand why they don't feel they have a commitment to basic law enforcement. I mean, basic complaints, but nevertheless, the lieutenant himself came down and explained everything to us.
They're doing that in a lot of counties, right? I know Hancock County, I think they're supposed to be done July first, but they bumped it.
Penobscot County put a bill in legislature, they wanted
I-
500,000,
I
and
heard
they didn't
that.
get it, but what they got was an agreement with the state police, that the state police would still give them, services up there. Well, so they're giving services to Penobscot County that we've lost.
My understanding is that Penobscot County is the only county that's, has that carve out, right?
Yeah, they pulled out all call sharing agreements statewide.
And then the other question I had was the budget for the district attorney, went up 18%, which seems significant. That,
Well, that's some of the cost shifting.
Yeah.
We had two positions that came out of the drug task force. One of those went to the sheriff for a patrol position. The other one went to the district attorney for a detective. The sheriff needed an additional detective to help with all of the referrals he was getting from the DA's office. We just felt it was more prudent to give the detective directly to the DA and let him direct those himself, and the sheriff would be responsible for those referrals. So that, even though that shows an increase in the DA's budget, the decrease in the drug task force balances that out.
Or helps, anyway. Because there's some increases in the sheriff's department also, so it's not quite a wash, but
yeah,
that's what the effort was.
like 20% sheriff's office.
Yeah, and the sheriff, in an effort to try to maintain staffing and whatnot, presented an $800,000 increase to his budget this year. That's unsustainable. We can't do that. You know what I mean? And so we had to get real creative on how we're going to continue to provide services without, that kind of an increase. He's got a $1.9 million budget in '23, and he wants 800,000 more. That's a 45% increase. So that just can't happen. We can't do that. I don't think the taxpayer would agree to that.
And for me, the tough thing is, especially all tied into the drug, just with this opioid epidemic we're experiencing and just, well, our hands are really tied. Even this,
Is Sheriff Kane attributing that $800,000 increase specifically to the state police pulling out services in Hancock County, or is there other explanations?
Well, of course, that was the standard increases. They just settled a union contract for the next 3 years, and that increased the cost. So I don't know how much of that 800. He wanted 3 patrolmen and a detective, and one of those patrolmen was a supervisor. So that was, those positions were over $100,000 in salaries and benefits, and then everybody had to have cruisers and guns and equipment, So it wasn't very hard to get up to 500,000 or 600,000 just to support the 4 increased positions that he was asking for.
Is he fully staffed right now? Like, I see that all of the positions he currently is funding for staff.
Well, for the primary function, yes. But of the MDEA, even though we were funding 2 positions, he hasn't filled one of those for a year and a half. So in '23, we funded taxpayer money, a position, and that money's just laying there. He didn't fund that. So there's an open position. Dedham wants a school resource officer, and they're willing to pay 100% of that. He hasn't filled that. So there are positions that he would fill if he could get the manpower. That's the state police's excuse for not supplying it. They can't get the people. And the sheriff is facing the same problem.
but it would be unfair to say that that whole increase is solely attributable to the state police pulling out, because that's just not the case. The labor contract, which we're responsible for, is a portion of that.
How many state police people were here before this last that we're trying to close the gap on?
Well, I'm not sure any left. It's just they won't respond to the calls.
What they're trying to do, instead of having their officers do primary patrol functions, they want their officers to specialize. So instead of an officer being on, up there handling day-to-day routine calls, he's gonna become a specialist doing everything from diving to, canine to tac force. And so they want, they're gonna do that high-tech, their mission is moving to high-tech and away from doing primary patrol functions.
Yeah, well, I know that, but how many in Hancock County did they traditionally have for people serving
I don't know.
slots 1, 2, and 3?
I don't know, because they started years ago, they would take half the slots. And it's a
Yeah.
slot a day, a slot at night, so they would take half of those slots, and there were 21 slots. There was 14 slots a week, and they would take 7 and we'd take 7. And then they went to, it was 3 slots. Then they said we can only take 1 slot, so the sheriff's department ended up taking 2 slots, and they took it down to 1 slot. Now they're saying we're not taking any slots. So as far as their staffing, I don't know. They have reorganized now. It used to be, Troop J used to be Hancock, Washington County, and now they've gone back to Piscataqua, Penobscot, Hancock, Washington County. That was a troop, and so an officer, a trooper that lives in Ellsworth today could be up in Dover, Foxcroft patrolling tomorrow, so.
If I remember correctly, I think he said that there were 3, I don't know if I'm remembering this right, 3 troopers that resided in Hancock County?
No, it's just 7 or 8 troopers
Oh,
that
is
live
there?
here.
Down.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 7 or 8 that live here, but,
But they made some of them supervisors, so they were out of the patrol. They
Okay.
never fill those, backfill those.
So many, okay.
Or if they did, it was, new folks, but right now, the guy that's covering whatever slot might be coming from Piscataqua. He's assigned to Hancock slot 2. Well, he's coming, he goes home for the night, if something comes up, he's coming from or Washington County somewhere, looking at Canada across the river, he's coming to.
Yeah, I listen on the scanner, and that's my concern, because, with less of the manpower and given, some of the situations that we have been and waiting, for somebody to come, and, most of Commissioner Wompacker's district, I mean, we don't have our own police people or anything else, and so, I mean, it's concerning, it really is. And I just think it's really unfair for the state to, not marshal in on this. Yeah, I know you're a labor shortage or whatever it is, but, you're not taking away from, the social stuff and the drug things that's going on, exacerbating the social situations and.
well, what's interesting is that we have 5, 6, 7 troopers living in Hancock County, and they, state police wants them to all become specialists. But none of these in Hancock County are specialists. So what are they doing? Like, you know what I
I
mean?
don't disagree with that.
And so that's my question, is that if you're not a specialist and you go to work and you're not being called out to TAC team or to the canine, or
Yeah, what are you
what
doing?
are you doing? And why, if you're not doing that, why aren't you taking a slot and working it?
Well, it seems to me we all gotta work together, and it just feels like that's not happening.
We're-
but it's
We're
concerning.
close to giving the sheriff, for every day and night shift, he'll have a sergeant, a supervisor, who is a working sergeant. State police sergeants don't handle complaints, but the sheriff's department sergeants do, and 3 deputies. So you have a 4-man crew minimum and whatnot. Keep the 3 slots, assign a deputy to each slot with a sergeant roving and assisting. And then you've got a backup lieutenant that's on, and weekdays and whatnot, you've got a chief deputy and 2 detectives. So we're hoping that this, in 24, we're gonna watch to see whether or not that staffing level is sufficient. And then in 25, we'll have to adjust it again if the numbers don't support that staffing level.
Thank you for the information. The other thing is too is, we've had incidents down our way. And it's easy for stuff with social media and everything else to get out of control. And, not having that manpower. And I'm worried frankly that I'm gonna exhaust out, my fire department and everything else is trying to provide assistance, and it's just been, but it's hard finding volunteers for it. What do I do if I just don't have members? And, I'm lucky I picked up a couple, but, we dropped tremendously. And we've got a interlocal agreement, some of them Sedgwick come down Stonington, or Stonington goes vice versa, they're all trying to work too, and, I don't wanna lose them either. And some of these incidents have been pretty traumatic on them.
I know the incidents are getting worse and the
Yeah.
responses.
We're not the only
less.
community
Yeah.
either, so it's concerning.
Yeah, and my guess is that your community is not alone. I think a lot of the rural communities that don't have departments are feeling it. They're the ones that are, feeling it the worst.
Yeah, fire department numbers are down, ambulance volunteers are down, so it's slow spiral downhill. I don't know what the answer is, but
I have a question. So if there's like a serious, something happening, say in Blue Hill, the next closest officer is in SWAT 2, am I right? Because Blue Hill is SWAT 1. And that person in SWAT 2 could be, how far does the areas go out, I guess is what I'm.
It could be clear up on the airline, it could be clear down the tree.
And that's quite a ways to back up somebody in Blue Hill.
But hoping that the sergeant makes himself readily available to move faster than the guy in the next slot. And if it's a weekday, you've got the lieutenant, you've got two detectives that can roll. So it's not a perfect situation, but it's, at least the guy's not out there all by himself, and he can expect at some point backup will arrive.
So we also will check with the state police if there's a new patrol unit or trooper available to back them up as well. So we do call out to them to say, like, I know you don't have a slot, but you got anybody in the area. Because their guys will be out in the area doing their own thing. So sometimes they will be.
Because that, to me, I think sounds very dangerous for the officers myself.
Well, and I think that's why the sheriff is asking for, more people.
And more people would solve all the problems. If we had a county-wide fire department, you wouldn't have to worry about volunteers. They're all full-time. Can you imagine the cost? You know what I mean? And if the sheriff was able to have all the people he needed that equaled the state police and he together, we know that that's somewhere in the neighborhood of $800,000 to $1 million more in the first year. And that's not sustainable. So,
Well, that's that 26.8%. And quite frankly, I don't think that even got in there. Anyone else? A lot of doom and gloom, but. We're ready to close the public hearing and nobody on.
Like sorry, you just have a mechanism for community organizations to request funds from the county, is that true and has that changed?
are you talking about the third-party requests that you used to handle?
Yeah.
We don't have third-party requests in the budget anymore. What we have is we have a separate grant program, and we do raise some of that money for the grants out of the budgets. The rest of it comes from community benefits and whatnot. So if those third-party entities can apply through the grant program for those grant.
What we're trying to do is lessen the impact on the communities, through taxation.
did you get more requests for third parties?
We haven't done that yet.
Okay.
We haven't started that program.
They've been notified that
Changed.
we've changed the process.
See, we won't start taking applications until we know that we have the matching funds in the budget.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait till, December before we can think about putting the grants out, because we need the 40,000 we put in the budget to match the 40,000 in the CPA.
But the organizations have been notified of the new process, and as you can imagine, some are not happy, but feel we have to do.
Well, and quite frankly, when it comes down to tax money and when there's not enough to go around, we should be dedicating our tax money to primary services, not some of the extra services that these third-party entities provide, so.
No, have it online again too.
Anyone else? Or anything else, I should say. We're ready to close the public hearing? Look like another question, no?
I think I'm good. Taking a
Oh,
lot of your
no,
time
please,
here.
that's what this is for, thank you.
You'll be joining the BAC meetings as well, right? Which will be another opportunity
Yeah.
to review stuff.
And that's
I mean-
really a good time because you have the department heads here to,
Right.
to ask in-depth questions like that. A lot of them.
It's good for me to hear too, because I sit on the criminal justice committee in the Maine legislature, and so we're getting, I heard the bell from, Troy Morton, Sheriff Morton, that county out there. So,
Well, what's interesting is that the state police withdrew help for our primary law enforcement functions, so we had to withdraw help for their drug investigations, right? Both those entities, the state police and the Maine Drug Enforcement, come under the Department of Public Safety, have the same commissioner. So if MTA is upset if we pulled out funding, get the chief, we can sit down with the commissioner and see if they can work that out, because if, I can tell you right now, if the state would come to us and say in 24, we will give you, we'll sign another call sharing agreement and give you one trooper per slot, per shift, then we wouldn't withdraw, then we put the funding back into MDA.
Ready to close the public hearing? Close the public hearing. I get to do this twice a year, so.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Thanks. Okay, next is, review and approval of the 2024, budget estimates with or without amendments after the obviously after the public hearing. So, Michael, you had some changes that,
So during, because we made changes to the proposed budget based on the last budget meeting that you had. And there were a lot of changes, obviously, especially between Department 46 and Department 10 and 12. So there were a couple that, after reviewing, we believe weren't consistent with what the intent of the commissioners were. So we want to make sure that you have a chance to weigh in on those. And if you want to make the changes tonight before you send it to the BAC, or just confirm that what we're now have in front of you is what you wanted. But account, our expense account in Department 10, 1015 100, the telephone was basically taking it out of the drug task force, Department 46, and moving it into Department 10. But we had left $1,000 in there, but it's our understanding that that's not necessarily needed in Department 10, and so it really should have been zeroed out. So what was proposed tonight for the public hearing included $1,000, but it really isn't needed if the intent was obviously to wipe that out from Department 46. So that one, again, would, well, that would be a savings of $1,000. I mean, it's not huge, but I mean, every little bit helps, so.
Where was that, Michael? What was the number?
So that is account 10, 15, 100, in Department 10. And then that's under utilities overall.
Yeah, it's moving, I had understood that that we were moving the cost for the officer moving from the drug task force for his telephone to Department 10, but Michelle says we don't need that $1,000.
Well, if IT pays for all,
Right,
why did they even need it in?
it was, I think because it was 50% reimbursable with the officer that was,
because of the drug task force.
right,
So we can remove that.
yes.
Yeah, to zero. Okay, by agreement, I'll agree to move it.
Okay, so probably what we should do is have a motion at the end, so are you keeping track of these?
Sure.
Okay, so this, my motion is gonna be that we approve the changes as presented, as
Yeah.
proposed.
Yeah.
As proposed, okay. No, this one,
So the next one was expense Department 10 still, 1010 606. which was listed as miscellaneous supplies, drug task force, again, same idea, same concept. $1,500 was in there, but we basically understood that you wanted that zeroed out, and the sheriff's, Michelle indicated the sheriff doesn't have a need for that money as intended, so being consistent with what you have, that would be a reduction from $1,500 to zero.
Quite
For
frankly,
the
that,
same reason.
Same,
Yes.
that was our intent,
yeah, zero.
Yeah.
because the drug task force should have been, the revenue and the expense should have been equivalent to the supervisor and his deductions, and that's it.
Yeah.
Everything else.
The correct changes were made in the, again, it was my understanding, my misunderstanding. The correct changes were made in 46,
They
but
just got transferred into the sheriff.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, that was never my intent, so.
That's,
Well, that's what we're straight.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the other one that we had a specific change is Department 12. And that account number is 1205-302. That's the health insurance airport one, which we're proposing be decreased by $11,835 to bring that total in that line item now to $12,273. And the reason for that is basically, we had mentioned at the last meeting about having to make changes because of the personnel change at the airport coverage, having put something in there because we're gonna budget, have to budget for health more than what's budgeted right now.
Which
But-
one was that?
So that was 1205-302. Health insurance for airport.
Okay, yeah,
But when we did the calculations and the payroll calculations, that also included stuff from last year, which should have been backed out as well. So that's where that 11,835 is being suggested. And we're just saying, we're estimating around 12,273 to be the actual budgeted need for that.
So technically, the revenue and the expenditures for the contract should equal.
yes.
And what have we adjusted to the revenues? Anything?
It'll have to be adjusted after we adjust the E1205-302, after we adjust that down to 12,273.
To make this corresponding adjustment.
That's
to
right.
revenues?
Right,
Which will have to be, or presumably would be the airport revenues.
right.
Yeah,
Airport
because we
security.
would obviously take that cost and bill it to the airport.
so that's 12,2 what?
12,5-302. So those were the
Michael, is there,
specific ones.
was there also, okay,
No, no, I'm talking about the amount.
yep, 12 to,
The amount was a reduction of 11,835 to bring that to 12,273.
From that 24 one over.
yes.
Okay, the next one?
So those were the specific ones, and then there were a couple other things in here that we weren't sure what the intent was, if I recall, correct?
Yeah, the discussion on, the amount for firearms.
Public safety,
In 10, yep,
yeah, so expense 10, 620. That was the, no, that's the other one. So 107305 was reserved. The original request in there was $6,000. And basically, we're told that should be moved to the expense line, so expense 1012, public safety was increased to make up for that $6,000 amount as part of the transfer. But that increased the original amount of 15,000 to 21,000 when that 6,000 was added back into that 1012 public safety.
But, wait a minute,
But
I show 12,000.
yeah, because that's why we just want to make sure, because then the commissioners, you went ahead and voted to cut that back to $12,000 in that line item.
And
So-
now we need to increase that.
Well, we're not suggesting that, we're just saying if the intent was to, if the 12,000 is what you felt needed to be budgeted, then you don't have to take any action. I think the intent was to make up those expenses in other ways, I think, so.
we were just pointing it out. There is no change
There's
currently.
no change that we're recommending, but unless we were completely off base with what you had indicated you wanted that amount to be, so. And the other one was basically Department 46, correct? That was the only other one we had.
Is that 12,000, is that what we?
That's what you had agreed on.
Yep.
Because that was more consistent with prior years, and any of the new requests you were gonna try to pursue in other ways, so.
He increased that from 12 to 21, believing he was gonna have 4 new
Officers,
Right.
yeah.
He's only getting 1, but that 1 is already a deputy, so he's not gonna have to go through all that,
So that's why we had lowered it by 9,000.
we put it back to where he had it before, to 12,000. Because even though he's getting an extra deputy,
Yeah, it had to
he's
do,
already a deputy.
what it originally had to do with was, funds for purchasing firearms.
Right, and because he told us in the reserve account that he was going to purchase those
Right.
in the year that he raised it,
Right.
it should go back into public safety and not
Right.
in the reserve account.
Right, but then you decided you didn't
To
need that
reduce that.
full amount.
Well, right, and as Michael said, we would pursue other
Right.
funds to purchase it
If it happened.
if he needs it.
And then the other one, just for clarification, not recommending a change, but we were just asking to confirm that the intent for clearing out again Department 46 is the funds that were in the G 1301350 account would be essentially moved to the G account for future use in Department 10. So in that particular case, the current balance in there, I think is what, 40,669.90. And then there's a budgeted amount of 25 in the current budget.
That wasn't my recommendation. My recommendation that would be applied to the budget to offset taxation, not to be put into a G account for the sheriff.
So,
So which budget would it be put into?
That's the question I would ask you. If I wanted to take that G account and I wanted to apply that to the budget to reduce taxation, how would you do that for me?
Well, then we'll have to figure that out.
so
It would have to be done as a transfer at the end of the year.
But again, I mean, I guess part of the question is money that was raised as reserves, reserve funds in
Can it-
prior years, can you turn around and put that back in for taxation reduction? I'm not sure that you can. really,
I'm
but-
not sure that's it.
Well,
Which number is it again? 46?
So,
but see, the thing
but
is,
it would be a G account.
And-
two things. First of all, this isn't money raised by taxation. That G account was forfeitures that the drug task force raised from that, so it wasn't
Yep.
taxation, but
Yep.
nevertheless, I'd be totally shocked if you couldn't take your reserve account and use some of that to offset the amount raised by taxation. So, I mean, I'd wanna know that before we abandon that. See what I'm saying?
So what you're wanting to do, that G account, I call that a capital,
Yeah.
It's an
Well,
yeah.
Yeah,
That we've been
But
socking
that's-
away money for a purpose. Now we want to pull that out of that.
Well, and we didn't really sock it away. What happened is that as it was raised as by forfeiture, we put it into a G account.
Yeah.
And then we were using that money, over the years, we were using that money to offset the amount we raised for taxation in the drug task force. So we've been doing that with that G account for years. That's what it was there for,
Well, yeah, we were applying it to expenses
in the drug task
in
force.
the drug task force.
So if we can apply it to expenses in the drug task force, we can apply that to expenses in the sheriff's budget.
So were there any conditions tied to those forfeiture funds? In other words, did they have to be spent on?
If there was, it was done by us. There was no.
No, that's what I'm saying. There wasn't any strings attached to it from.
No, in
state
fact,
that
in
money.
fact, the sheriff talked to commissioners one time into buying a side-by-side ATV at it. So, I mean, but the intent was to use that money to offset the money we raised in drug task force. So we were using that to reduce taxes for drug task force. So we should be able to use that for the money we raised in sheriff's budget.
my only thought process of using it would be to move it or even just keep it in that G account, but I understand you're trying to find a place where it could offset the budget. But it seems like we want to keep it in a G account for,
Well, I mean, if you're looking for offset, then basically what you'd have to be doing is transferring that to a revenue line item. Because if you put it into an expense account, you're actually increasing the budget with nothing to support it otherwise. So basically what
right,
you're
you have to
talking
do a
about is
transfer, that's what
transfer
I,
into.
that's what I was trying
If
to
you look at the
say.
2023 Drug Task Force budget, you will see just a revenue line in there from reserves. I
Right,
think it was what, 25,000?
right,
Right. And I'm looking for that same revenue reserve amount in the sheriff's budget for 24 for the balance of that year.
okay,
Well,
That 25,000 that's in the budget, that wasn't forfeitures, was it?
yes, that's where it came from.
So in 2023, we knew for sure we were getting 25,000.
yeah,
Yes, because we knew what the G account, what was in the G account before we transferred that amount in there.
The G
So
account only had 40,000.
the total at the end of the year will be
Well, it has
60.
40,000 now, but what
60.
what did it have in the fall of 22 when we were deciding what to put in there for?
So what you're trying, let me understand, what you're trying to do, or what you're wanting to do is pull this out of this Department 46 into the sheriff's. Because this is,
What I want to do is that because we're not going to be transferring money into the drug task force anymore for forfeitures, I want to take that money and put that towards somebody's, and ideally the sheriff's, account as a reserve to offset the amount he raised by taxation. But I don't want to put it into a G account for the sheriff, to use for buying, toys. I want that to go towards my purposes, to go towards reducing the amount we raise by taxation, just like we used it for the drug task force.
So Tom said, basically, the only way I see it is you transfer it from general account that it's in right now to as a revenue offset into Department 10 as revenue. I mean, that's,
well, what's the alternative? Leave it there?
well, if you leave it there, it's then, I mean, you can still decide what to do with it, I guess, but you're not gonna, it's not gonna offset.
It's not gonna offset
Not
anything in
gonna
the
offset
budget.
anything in the budget.
It's just gonna stay in what I call a capital
Yeah, I
improvement
mean,
program.
because it's not in quote unquote the budget right now, that amount that's in there. The 25 that was raised in 23, the current year budget is, but the other part wasn't.
Well,
That had been raised in prior years.
isn't that safer than putting it into a G account in sheriff's budget?
We're trying to fund you.
Yeah, I'm looking to you, Bill.
Well, it's a little confusing because the amount for 21 wasn't transferred. There was 25 raised for 22, there was 25 supposed to go into the reserve account, it never got transferred. And they're showing a balance of 10,000 as we were doing our budget preparation. But in 23, they've raised enough, so 40,000 in there now, right, Nicole?
Yeah, that's what we're showing now, 49, 69.
49?
That's what 40.
40,000
9, 69.
40,000.
is the current balance, plus there's 25,000 budgeted to be transferred at the end of this year.
This year being 2023.
2020.
Yes,
We didn't raise any money for that.
yes,
No, we didn't. We never raised any money. That reserve is transfer from the G account into the drug task force to offset the amount of money.
okay.
The bottom line is, Paul, there was $41,000 in that account. It's not gonna go back towards drug task force because we no longer have a drug task force. So they're not going to need that to offset the amount of money we raise to support the drug task force. And I'm saying, rather than put that in a G account for somebody to use for their own purposes, I'd like to see that 41,000,
Move to the operating fund.
move into the revenue account and offset the amount raised by taxation by that amount.
So you're saying on the revenue in the sheriff's budget, Department 10, put it into what?
It's going to be 40,900 and some dollar revenue from transfer. That would be a transfer from the drug task force G account. That would reduce the amount that we're going to raise for taxation for the sheriff's budget.
Because you have more revenue. Okay,
You'd have that $41,000 in revenue.
and where would you propose that, go, which line, like
That's-
miscellaneous revenues or?
That's Monica's.
So, I mean, we could either create a new line specific to that, which would only be a one-time thing, or you'd have to break it down in miscellaneous, but. I don't,
Well, yeah, I mean, you could just put it in that miscellaneous revenues.
What's the, okay, so I'm following Bill's proposal, what's the, is there a downside here?
The downside for doing this.
Yeah.
That's a, I don't know the downside to doing this because it accomplishes what we're gonna have to do throughout this thing, and that's to reduce the amount of money we raise by taxation. The downside for not doing it is that you put it in somebody's G account, like the sheriff's G account, he ends up buying blue lights and sirens instead of offsetting the amount raised by taxation. So its intended purpose has gone away. The purpose was to reduce the amount of money we raised by taxation for drug task force. We're not raising any more for that drug task force, so that purpose for that reserve account is gone. So now it's just a matter of, can we find a good use for that?
Well, what if it comes back?
And you start all over again, just like they want. As forfeitures come in, you put it back into the reserve account. We're not gonna get any more forfeitures because we're
We're
not.
not participating.
We're not contributing to
Yeah.
the death.
So the only amount we're moving, I just wanna be clear, is the 40,970. We're not moving the 25,000, which is in the 25,000, which is in the 2023 budget reserve transfer.
So,
I'm just making
No,
sure,
that's-
because it's not being received,
Monica,
we're not,
the 25 is a portion of the 40.
no,
If that's,
for,
if you haven't transferred out of the G account, the drug task force G account, that 25 that we had set for drug task force in 23, then that 25 is part of the 40,900.
but what Monica said is that transfer hasn't taken place.
If it hasn't, then we don't have 40,000. You've only got 16,000.
no, the balance, the current balance of that G account right now is 40,000.
Right, but you haven't transferred the 25 that is supposed to come out of that to support the drug task force in 23, have you?
But she did 22.
Nevertheless, in 23, she hasn't, so that 25 that you're going to transfer from the G account, the drug task force, is part of the 40,900.
No.
Yes, it is. She's got to find 25,000. If we continue to fund the drug task force for the 23 budget, she's got to find $25,000 to balance out the drug task force account for 23.
Well, let me ask the question this way. And was there any expenditures out of that account in 23?
The G account?
Oh, no, out of that account in 23?
Yeah.
Out of the G account, no,
Was there in 22?
I'd have to,
Okay, because, well, here's why I'm asking that question. In 22 was funded at 25, right? So if your theory is correct, there would only be 16 in there.
But it
If
didn't,
23,
but it didn't get transferred.
right, the 20, The 25 did not get transferred in
because
22.
there wasn't enough money to transfer.
Right, but the balance is still the 40,000.
It is today. And we were looking at it in the fall of 22, and it only had 10,000, so you couldn't make that transfer because you didn't end up. We anticipated getting more money than we actually got. We didn't have enough money in 22 to make that 25,000 transfer
In 22.
in 22. But we anticipated that we would get it in 23, so we did it again. And we said, okay, we're gonna take 25,000 out of the drug task force G account. Put it in the drug task force revenue, offset the amount we raised by taxation for the drug task force expenses. And that hasn't been done yet, then that 25,000 is part of that 40,900. Because we didn't raise by taxation 25,000 for the drug task force. That 25,000 was raised as a result of taking it from the drug task force G account, putting it in. Well, it really comes, if you don't have to do this for the budget,
Right.
it's basically, we have time enough to figure this out, because we don't want to be making a $25,000 revenue
Right.
for the sheriff if there's only 16,000 in.
Right.
Because if she needs to take 25 to balance the 23 DTF budget, which is still, that budget's, that's operational until December 31st. And she does do that, we don't get any more forfeitures this year, she's only got 16,000 towards the 24 budget.
So we probably shouldn't take any action on that.
I don't think we need to, their question was,
But it won't, if you don't take action on it, the BAC doesn't take action on it. It's not getting into the 2024 budget as a reduction of, you're gonna have your set revenues, you're gonna have your set expenses, and the net's gotta be made up of taxation. So that revenue, you can't, after the fact, say, oh, we're gonna get more revenue and now we're gonna reduce the taxes. No, because that's not part of the budget calculation.
That's right.
So you've gotta either decide tonight or convince the BAC later, or go back at the very end when you're closer in December and get three of you to agree to override whatever change is and make that final change before you finalize the final budget.
I think that's the only way to do it, because I don't think we have enough, we don't know, we don't have all the information.
well, the other thing is too, is there is a slim chance that the drug task force will get more forfeitures before the end of the year. And if the intent is to zero out the drug task force G account, then we should know, we should wait as long as we can in 23 to find out what that number is, and then zero it out. So I'm saying, Michael, that we do wait until after the BAC, and then that's not going to be a controversial issue. It's just how much is in there, whatever's in there gets reserved to the sheriff's revenue account.
Yeah, I mean, just as long, I mean, of course, there's only two of you, so I mean, you don't know where John's gonna fall, but as long as you can override the provisions of the BAC, then you, I guess, wouldn't have to worry.
Yeah, or if we had the information prior to that, the BAC could take
Recommend
action.
it to the BAC, yeah.
Okay, so there's,
Well, we do have that information today, but how accurate is that going to be December 14th? You know what I mean? We gotta finalize the budget by the 15th of December. And if we get more revenues and we want to zero that account out, we're gonna have to override the BAC, even if we give them that $16,000 figure.
okay, so
I think we're making a lot bigger deal out of this than necessary.
okay, so there's no action on that one. Take, Michael, is there others?
So the only other stuff, I believe, that should have taken care of the sheriff items, Department 10, 12, and 46. So the only other thing is Department 3 with the DA's budget, and they sent us back a thing, yesterday that basically said they went back and kind of broke things up a little bit more, and their dues and subscription account, they basically indicated that they could move that from what I believe is 4,000 right now down to 2,508. And the 330-105 statute account, they actually indicated need to be slightly increased from 6,174.84 to 6,300. And then
No.
Or 6,300, yeah.
Down to 617
No, it's currently, isn't it down, yeah,
Which one, which account is that?
statutes.
statutes, yeah.
Which is?
30 dash.
So that's 30/30/105, 03/30/105, sorry.
And that's going up or down? like-
Down, sorry, so if, right now it's 63, they estimated it could go down to 6,174.80.
And,
6,000.
well, wait a minute. Down in the rest of the information they sent us,
Dues and subscriptions down from 4,000 to 2,508. Statutes down from 6,300 to 6,174.84.
somewhere though in here. Michael, this you sent us from the DA's office, has that been amended to this? Now, which I have a two-page document.
So we have the original email, which they broke down in the email, costs associated with that, supplies, equipment, and all the other stuff with it.
Okay, all right.
So then you have that, and then this is basically a combination.
Yeah, you simply reduced it so you could get it on one page. I gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah, basically.
All right, and I'm suggesting that statutes stay at 63 because they're talking about detective needing $100 for statutes. So if we left it, instead of reducing it to 61.50 or whatever it is, just leave it at 63 to cover the
Yep.
detectives. So we don't need to make a change. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I don't have that.
This should, that's all right, yeah. Look at the next to the last entry down at the bottom.
Oh, statute books, okay, yeah.
Now that's for the detective. So anyways, I'm saying that leave the 63 in there to cover the DAs, the attorneys, and the detectives' statutes.
And the other, if you do that, the other account that was mentioned for their calculations is the 03/30/230 computer software.
320.
320. He has it listed as 230.
03?
Yeah, so.
03/30. 320.
Oh.
320, it's 46,000.
30.
Right, she wants to increase that one to 48,703.30. By her math with all the, because you guys had asked for a review of the
Right down.
software that they needed.
We should encourage these people to do whole numbers.
So you could call it 48,700. Instead of the 46,000 that's there.
48,700.
Yeah, if he likes the whole numbers. The only other one than that, if you want to agree to the reduction of the dues and subscriptions from 4,000 to 2,500. EO 3, 07, 500.
Yeah, instead of 2508.
Yeah.
I guess the reason they're doing that is because they know the actual cost.
Right, that's right. She's being.
In which case, what, they just overspent that?
$2.
Yeah.
Because in the end of, by the end of the year, it could be up or down $1 or $2 anyway.
And she's estimating, it looks like they're basically projecting 5% expected increase anyway, so it could go anywhere,
Yeah,
all over.
yeah, so what we're doing is not big, so.
Oh, sorry, significant, right.
But that still doesn't fund the rest of his wish list here at the bottom of the page, correct?
That's right,
Yeah, so there's still a shortage of 15,330.
that's right.
Well.
430.
And they didn't factor in the vehicle price either, because that would be like, the 50 or whatever thousand.
40 or 50.
So that 15,430 does not include a vehicle price unless there's a commitment somewhere else for that. And what I read, I thought they said they're looking to try to get a new vehicle for that, so.
So what I'm proposing, Paul, is that from their wish list,
That's what this,
right, that we add to his budget those either incidental items, or small items, $25, $30 items, or the reoccurring ones in subsequent years. So example, he's gonna have to qualify every year and buy ammunition, so that's gonna be an annual expense every year. And that should go into his budget.
oh, what,
On a new line for public safety.
Right, you'd have to have a new line, 10012 or something like
Yep,
that.
yep.
For that.
and what you're proposing is all these items. Items to be paid with ARPA. You're saying pull those out of the budget.
Pull those out of his wish list, they're not even in the budget. We've got to add stuff to the budget that's in his wish list to support the detective.
Before looking at the list for ARPA.
So I'm saying that, for example, supplies, 10012, Monica?
Yes,
Okay, so we.
that's public safety.
Right. Public safety, that we add the $25 he wants for cuffs, $300 he wants for ammo, and the $25 he wants for a recorder. That all goes in public safety.
We're chopping down the wish list and moving a little bit of it
I'm
into
moving,
public
right,
safety.
trying to identify those things that reoccur
Yep,
every year.
yep.
To the budget, and the rest of it, we'll have to find some other sources for Brian. With the cruiser and everything else, it won't come out of his budget.
You have Bill's list.
I do, and,
So,
when I saw this list, or I didn't see it, but when we talked about, we sort of knew this was coming.
That's right.
Like cruiser, I was like, why would we be using an older?
right, and so from his wish list, I think the only three things now, because we've added money for statutes, books and periodicals,
So that takes it out of this.
yep, takes that out of that. And if we put cuffs, ammo, and recorder in the public safety, then the rest of these items in his wish list, we could talk about outside of raising it in the budget.
So cuffs,
Cuffs is 25,
ammunition,
ammunition 300, and third from the last
Yeah,
list was a.
we would just end up taking those items off that wish list as,
Right.
and see what we end up with.
okay, so that's $350. You'd be taking that $350 and putting it into the public,
Yeah, he rounded it up to 400.
yeah,
Who did?
You did,
you did.
on your 01,
Oh, on that, yeah.
10-012.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so that 10, that's in the sheriff's budget.
What?
Right, that's Department 10.
No,
No,
you left off the prefix.
It's 0310.
Okay, now I'm following you. You left off okay, it's still in Department
3,
3.
yes.
We're talking about what we're going to do to
Yeah, yeah.
amend his
Yeah.
budget. So the net effect, because communications is coming out of IT,
Yeah, you would have to, you may have to increase IT's budget by that 1,000 to account for a phone for,
you think he's figured that close?
I don't know. I'd have to talk to Chuck.
But maybe the adjustment we'll have to do later.
Well, right now, since this dollar amount is here, it probably should go in there, because we don't know the answer.
We can do it that way for now, just to get the increase in there,
Yeah,
and then we may
So
have
you're
to,
gonna add 1,000 to Chuck's? Is
well,
that
what,
what you're saying?
that's what I'm saying.
oh, go ahead and add it to Chuck's.
Yeah, that way the
Yeah.
BAC has a number that's,
Yep,
you know. And then if we're wrong, then,
it's better to add it now. than
Yeah.
to-
I think it's better the other way around. If we add it, we're gonna have to raise it. If we don't add it, he needs it, we'll have to find it somewhere. Because if we raise it, if we add it and raise it, don't need it, that's money we added to taxation that didn't need to be raised. So I'm saying that, you know, when you're talking about six-figure budget line, well, geez, maybe he can find $1,000 in that six-figure line, so
okay.
I don't
Yeah, that's,
I don't want to raise Chuck's, I don't want to raise that. We can do it at the end of the year. Chuck comes in and says, I got concrete phases, so there's gonna be 1,000 short. If Chuck comes in and says, I'll take a crack at it, maybe I can find that.
okay. Again, not you following him.
But we're not gonna include it here,
I don't want to wait.
right? We can cross that off,
$1,000.
right,
Yeah.
It's not gonna be in the DA's budget.
right,
And it's not gonna be added to Chuck's today.
right,
Okay. We are gonna add the 400 though to the public
Yes.
safety line for
yes,
DA.
yes.
That's all we have.
And the 1,000, you had changed 03, 07, 600. Yeah, you had it reduced from 4,300, but the line is already at 3,000. So I'm guessing you probably want to just keep it at the 3,000. The training line, Bill,
Yeah, we had lowered it
to
to
3,000.
3,000. And he, the DA is proposing that can be down to 1,000.
No, Bill made that
Oh,
change to 1,000.
He is wanting increase. I'm looking at his figures, and it's a small, I didn't read it, but increase includes startup training for the new investigator. And that is one more adjustment I want to make to this, and we can talk about it right now.
well, isn't that the same conversation we had that brought it from 43 to 3,000?
No, a statute. Oh, I don't, I don't,
No, in training, the
oh,
department had brought
43, we reduced it to
4,300,
3,000.
and we
Yeah.
reduced it to 3,000.
Yeah,
And the reason I believe at the time was is you felt that that detective was gonna have to be
come in,
obviously fully certified and trained and
come in.
Yeah,
at
have a
level
lot
where
of
they wouldn't-
certification and experience so that there wasn't gonna be that additional need for
That's why we lowered it from 43 to 3.
3,000.
But while we're talking about that, if that's, you agree to that, then
Well, we already did agree to the 3,000.
if that's what you agreed to, that's why you agreed.
Yeah.
Then we need to go back to the detective's salary. Because
Yeah, you had,
you're not gonna get the quality and the caliber of the detective for that amount of money.
for the 66.
It's not gonna happen. That needs to go to 80.
And that's what he,
And I don't think somebody came up, see, he talked with you, did he?
Well, he talked with the sheriff and then he told us based on what he said with the sheriff, he based it on what a detective would be at the level of the sheriff's. So that's where that 66 came from, because we took the equivalent on the wage scale and calculated what that cost would have been. Which, keeping in mind, if you do decide to increase this on the detective, you're just gonna have to specify 2 and any related additional benefits as a result of this change, so that, because Spike got.
Yeah, the employee
Yeah, all those
costs,
things.
the employee costs.
Money adjusted.
The sheriff has 2 detectives. And those 2 detectives are going to receive $158,024. That's almost $80,000 apiece. So I don't know where the 60-some thousand came, because he's paying, and one of those guys is paying more than the other, but nevertheless, it's an average of 80,000.
But that was his request.
So that was,
No,
that was
that's,
the,
no, that's.
that was the DA's request based upon his conversation with Scott,
The sheriff.
the sheriff, yeah.
That's a
They were-
158
Bill,
is
they were-
union contract.
They were looking at 14C on the wage scale.
But that's the other thing too, this particular position wouldn't be covered by you.
Correct. Nevertheless, if that's what you're paying a detective,
Yeah, I'm not arguing for it, I'm just saying why that 66 was at 66 and not higher was because that's what they were.
Well, and to me, that's what he's asked for. Right? That 66
Well,
is
I mean,
his request.
It does get back to what Commissioner Clark indicated, I mean, will that be sufficient? And depending on what you want them to have, and I mean, Commissioner Clark's probably right, it probably does need to be higher. If they want to get somebody that has experience and certifications and all that other stuff, but I mean, you don't know that until you do it.
but if you don't raise enough money,
Yeah, then
and
you're,
you don't get
you're
that
stuck.
qualified, then he doesn't get a detective.
So your point is send to the BAC 80,000.
Yes. Basically, when he comes to us with a job description and whatnot, we'll have a pay raise somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 to 85 or something like that.
Well, not 85, 80.
Well,
65 to 80. No, yeah.
But,
And it will change the employee costs, as we said.
it'll be a $14,000 net increase.
Yeah.
13 something.
So your proposal is increase that amount up to $80,000.
Right.
Pull these other things out. This list. Because those are one-time costs.
We're gonna keep the training at 3,000, is that what we agreed?
Well, sort of got off on this tangent
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah,
So
Yes.
we gotta decide.
keep
We're
it,
gonna keep it at 3,000.
okay,
I didn't realize, I wanted to go back to what it was, and I didn't realize that was.
okay.
So we're gonna, okay,
Oh, I was looking at his figure in blue when I.
Yep.
When I,
From a little bit
Yeah,
older
okay.
version.
yeah, it's an older version.
okay, so we've settled that one. We haven't settled line 142.
So,
We haven't settled line
the
The
142,
payroll.
the wages.
the wages. You think we should send 80?
yes,
Okay,
I mean, this year, 2 detectives together were 155,000. So. That's $78,000, 77,500 apiece. You're not gonna get the caliber of that he needs up there at $66,000.
okay, so your proposal is to bring that to 80.
And the-
What do we do about the next group?
benefits,
Yes, the benefit
they just
line.
have to compute that.
Yeah, so it would be, the instructions to us would be basically to adjust that to a base salary of 80,000 and
Adjust the employee costs.
accordingly.
That's a given. If you don't pay 80, you gotta pay the deduction.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that has to be spent, but you're just trying to throw a more realistic number in this budget.
We have plenty of time in the future to talk about exactly what he's gonna pay.
What he's gonna do, what he's gonna spend, okay? Okay. Are there other items?
I don't have anything. Anything else, Michael?
No, I don't believe so, so we can real quick, just go through this. Even starting with Department 10 so change expense 10, 15, 100 telephone DTF will be reduced by $1,000 to 0. So that was the first one we talked about. Second one is expense 10, 606 miscellaneous supplies, DTF be reduced by $1,500 to 0. That's the second.
What was the first one, Michael?
First one was the 10, 15, 100
Okay,
telephone one. Down by 1,000.
Yep.
10, 606 miscellaneous supplies, down by 1,500.
Yep.
Department 12, for that item then, 12,05,302 would be reduced by $11,835 to bring it down to 12,273. The other one, stay away from. And then for the DAs is decreasing account 30307,500 dues and subscriptions, decreasing that by $1,500 to $2,500. And 033320, the computer software, increasing that by $2,700 to $48,700. And then with the rest of the list by Commissioner Clark, the 0301-142 detective, increasing that from 66,310 to 80,000. And then 0310-012 public safety, increasing that by 400 or putting $400 in public safety for those.
That's a new law.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
And what that's really doing is taking that out from the DA's list.
yes.
And then the rest of this, the rest of those items would not be in the budget, but we would,
Right, we'll talk about.
yeah.
Other department.
Okay,
So if that be the case, I'm gonna move to refer the approved budget estimates to the Budget Advisory Committee as proposed tonight.
as proposed and amended, how's that? They're gonna be amending it with the changes that have just been outlined.
That's the motion.
Okay. And I'm gonna second it. Any further discussion? Michael or Monica, any questions or comments? Everybody's clear what? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So unanimous. Anything else?
So
Comments?
just, I mean, I think you combined it into one, but you basically just said you're referring what you just did, so you don't have to do another vote on referral, it's basically combined into one thing.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's your
just
intention
as long-
though, right?
Yeah, just as long as we're clear that what you forward, if that's what you want us to make the edits to or changes to, and then
Refer,
that's what goes to the AG.
yeah, that was your intention though, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's what we voted on. Okay, anything else? Then a motion to adjourn will be
I'm gonna move that we adjourn.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So unanimous. Thank you, sorry to make your heads blow up.
This is the process.
This
No,
is-
We've been here before. Have you guys, what about the 2022 audit? Is that ready yet?
No? Aren't you the Kathleen who emailed me today?
Yeah,
And I said it's in progress?
yeah.
It can take a while to get that done.
Okay, because
So then
you gave me 2021.
Yeah.
Yep,
Because that goes to December 2021.
yep.
And then 22 was closed,
But the, au-
right? December 22 was closed.
yep, but the audit isn't
We
done.
just don't have it back.
It's just a long process.
Well, I know, I do audits too, but
Yeah.
I usually do a little ass cracking, so when I start on my next budget, I know what I got the money to deal with. And it's awful hard to go into a budget season when you don't know, and approve a budget when you don't know financially where they really stand either. You know, I'm not trying to give you hell, but you should know what you got for reserve, you should know what you got for fund balances, you
Well,
know,
hopefully,
surplus.
hopefully by December,
We'll probably.
Well, I know, but in November, you're asking people to approve a budget to move ahead, and we don't know where it is neither, so.
We'll probably have information in November.